Hello everyone, I'm Sophie and I'm currently at Kechara Forest Retreat, Bentong, Malaysia. And this is the book that I'll be sharing from, Unleashing Buddhanature, Personal Accounts of Those Touched and Reformed through the teachings of His Eminence the 25th Sam Rinpoche. So today I'll be reading about the story by Pastor Lo Sing Piao, Getting Real with Dharma, page 134. So let me share his picture. There you go. This is Pastor Sing Piao with Rinpoche. Getting Real with Dharma, Pastor Lo Sing Piao. And here's a short write-up of Pastor Sing Piao. Pastor Lo Sing Piao graduated with a bachelor's degree in applied science from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and earned his master's degree from Singapore MIT Alliance. He was destined for a life of fat pay checks, but he walked away from that in 2005 to dedicate his life to the Dharma. He is now the personal attendant of His Eminence the 25th Sam Rinpoche. And so here's his story. Buddhism is all about the big words, compassion, selflessness, and so on. But how do you practice it in real life? His Eminence the 25th Sam Rinpoche showed me how to walk the grand talk down on earth. It was early 2005 when I decided to quit my cushy engineering career in Singapore to join Kechara full-time. My parents did not take the news well. Their son, a master's degree holder, was going places with his high-paying job. Now, he intended to join a religious organization that pays peanuts, if it can afford to pay him at all. To be honest, that was not my plan either. I became a Buddhist during my university days, but I had always imagined myself driving a fine car back home and living in a posh neighborhood. If I just stuck to engineering, a comfortable future was in the cards. That was, however, before I was introduced to Rinpoche by a friend. I was moved by Rinpoche's knowledge of Dharma. His explanations on all my questions about life always satisfied me. But most importantly, I was inspired by Rinpoche's generosity. He always puts others' needs beyond his own, and he is ready to help any time of the day, even when it is inconvenient. If anyone was depressed, troubled, or had Dharma questions, Rinpoche would sit down and talk to them, sometimes for hours. Back then, he had little money and resources, but if anyone needed help, he would go the extra mile to make sure that their problems were solved. There was no, I've got to check my schedule, or I'm not sure if my budget allows it, from him. To me, Rinpoche is the embodiment of the compassion that I had read so much about in the sutras. I made a decision then to follow this Lama. True be told, my switch from engineering to Dharma work was only a matter of time. Rinpoche was in Kuala Lumpur at that time, and I was already traveling back and forth every weekend between Singapore and Kuala Lumpur to help Rinpoche run errands or anything else he needed help with. Nonetheless, I was aware of the comforts that I would have to let go of if I worked for Rinpoche full-time. I might not be able to afford my own home or leisure purchases from then on. I was dependent on financial pledges from Rinpoche's other students back then, which was 100 ringgit here and there, not a huge sum. Hence, my stipend was a far cry from what I used to earn. For the first few months, I didn't even receive any pay. It took some getting used to, but I had little qualms about it. Detaching from worldly possessions was all part of the Dharma path. My family wasn't able to see it that way though. While my parents did not outright rebuke me, there was obvious disgruntlement in their interactions with me. Sometimes they would grumble too. Our relationship grew tense. One day, Rinpoche told me to bring a gift to my family. He instructed me not to reveal that the gift was from him, but that I should say that I had bought it instead. I obeyed. My family was overjoyed. It was not so much because of what they received, but they were happy that I still cared for them enough to buy them such a gift. This began to improve our relationship. We started talking to each other amicably again, and the mood in the family lifted. Without the emotional barriers between us, my family even began to notice how Dharma work had changed me. I used to be short-tempered, but I have become a much more patient man since joining Kachara. It was then that I truly understood what Rinpoche always tells us. Harmony in the family is real-life Dharma. The unique thing about Rinpoche is that he always emphasizes on applying the big words of Buddhism, compassion, kindness, into real-world situations. To open minds, he uses gifts, and as long as he felt that the gift would benefit the receiver, he had no limitations on what he would give. There were many times when Rinpoche had sent Buddhist statues and pendants worth thousands of ringgit to random commenters on his blog, just because he felt that the commenters needed them. At other times, Rinpoche would give something as simple as a toy to a child. Many of his students also received similar generosity from Rinpoche. He would buy gifts for the students' families and told them to say that they had bought it, not him. Ultimately, Rinpoche just wants to bring happiness to people. My family, for example, became more accepting towards my work, and this lightened their hearts and restored harmony within our home. It would not have been the same effect if Rinpoche had sent them Dharma gifts like holy books or statues. They would not know what to do with it. Sometimes you need worldly gifts to reach out to everyday people. Rinpoche always tells us Buddhism is not about meditating for 3 hours every day. It's about what you do when you are not meditating. And as Rinpoche's students, we undergo training to prepare for those meditating hours. One of my trainings, for example, is to overcome my reluctance to talk. Out of the blue, Rinpoche would ask me to tell him a story, and I would have to rake my head for something to say, even though I hated doing it. Eventually, I realized that talking is a form of generosity because sometimes people can benefit from what you have to say. Rinpoche was training me to get used to talking, just like how he can spend hours explaining or counseling someone who is seeking his wisdom. Speaking is one battle, but knowing what to say is another. I remember that I used to get irritated when Rinpoche accused me of doing something wrong when I knew I was in the right. My ego was hurt. However, it gradually became clear that Rinpoche was training me to detach from my need to be right all the time. When spreading Dharma teachings, we would meet all sorts of people. They may be angry or they may criticize us. If we became so caught up with defending ourselves, our message may be lost. So sometimes skillful interaction means letting them win. Then they may be more inclined to let down their guard and hear us out, and maybe benefit from our message. The key is to learn not to react to a person's harsh speech, because reaction comes from the ego. One who has undergone training of the mind would be able to take a step back and say, "I'm sorry, let me try and explain this again." Learning how to handle angry speech takes practice, But choosing to put ourselves at risk of facing anger is harder still. When faced with unpleasant people, many of us would rather look the other way and let things slide. It is much easier to avoid confrontation, lest the person we confront turns around to humiliate or scold us. However, Rinpoche trained us to do the exact opposite. When we faced shopkeepers and salespeople with bad attitudes, he would urge us to be honest with them about our displeasure. The reason is that by skillfully pointing out the storekeeper's rudeness without humiliating him, we might help him to improve his services, and other shoppers would not have to suffer the same unpleasant treatment from him. However, our confrontation has to be done out of care, not anger. How can we tell if we are doing something out of care? By checking our motivation. Rinpoche always tells us that we should protect the mind of others. If you approach people who have wronged you without the intention to hurt, then it's kindness at work. These trainings can be difficult, as it requires us to leave our comfort zone, talking when I do not feel like it, letting other people win an argument when I know they are wrong, confronting rude salespeople. These are behaviors that I'm not used to. However, mind training is constant habituation. In the beginning, I may have to fake it, take talking patiently to someone even when my heart is not in it, apologizing to someone who I just want to yell at for being unreasonable, or taking a rude salesperson aside to talk to them about their behavior, even though I just want to walk away. But constantly engaging in compassionate behavior, even though I may be pretending at first, would make it a habit. And one day, when the mind clicks, they become instinct, a part of who I am. And that's the sharing by Pastor Lo Sing Piao, how Rinpoche trained him to leave his comfort zone by talking and doing the things that he disliked, like like letting go of being right all the time, and also to talk to rude salespeople about their behavior that may affect, their service towards everyone that they serve. So this is how Rinpoche puts, people through training, whatever that he feels, or whatever that he knows that we are reluctant to do to overcome our comfort zone. Okay, anyway, thank you for sharing your time with me. So next week I'll be doing, next session I'll be doing sharing the story of another student. So do join me and find out who. So now we'll end this with a completion dedication in Tibetan. Jang yo sen jo rinpoche ma ke pa nam ge shi ke pa nam pa me pa yang go ne go do pe wa shu do ni do rinpoche ma ke pa nam ge shi ke pa nam pa me pa yang go ne go do pe wa shu da so ji ni sa pa ge wa di ta nan ro wa go na ka pa dang je pa je su no san tra pa yi tam ping in po rin du sa se shu ke wa kun to yan da la ma dan ra mi jo ki pa la no jo che sa dam nang yi yat de ra zo ne do je chang yi nga pa nga tu sa ge wa di nyu du da la ma sang ge dro yo ne dro wa chi ke ma lo pa de sa la go pa shu choki ka po song ka pa chosu nam pa pe wala ge ki sa ma si wa dan tung ki ma lo sang wa shu da dam sang ge du sun dan dre wa song in na te ne ge wa lo san tra pa yi tam pa yu riva gi shi ni mo de la sen de le ni mi go nyen de la shi ni sen ta tu de la pa kon cho song yi jing gi lo kon cho song yi ngo dro so kon cho song yi tra se sho je su la ma ko sen rap ting chi nam ka tre ni cho chu ke pa dang lo sam tem pe tro mi sap song yi tro he mun sa ta to ni ge shi gang re ra we ko we shin kam de pen nan de wa ma nu gyo we ni cha ren se won ten sing get so yi sha pe shi de ba do ten gi shi hôm đông bình ngõ trộm malu pa đến đến đó là sao du số có đàn đến pa long chọn nam cái pa số shi shuk den sao. Thank you, and please do join me for my next sharing.